The harsh wind howled through the frost-covered pines, as Sophia Archer desperately wrapped her arms around her younger sister, trying to shield her from the relentless blizzard that had descended upon them without warning. The broken wheel of their stagecoach lay half buried in snow, and the driver had gone for help hours ago, never to return. "Hang on, Madeline," Sophia whispered, her breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. "Someone will come." But as the temperature continued to drop, her voice trembled with the uncertainty that plagued her heart. It was January 1878, and the sisters had been traveling to Prescott, Arizona Territory, to start a new life after the death of their parents. Their journey had begun with such hope, but now, stranded in the mountains during the worst winter storm in years, that hope was fading with each passing minute. Madeline's face had grown alarmingly pale, her lips taking on a bluish tint. At 19, she was 4 years younger than Sophia, but had always been the more delicate of the two. "I'm so cold, Soph," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the wind. "I can't feel my feet anymore." Panic surged through Sophia's veins. They wouldn't survive another hour in these conditions. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape, and with nightfall would come temperatures that would surely claim their lives. "We need to move," Sophia decided, pulling her sister to her feet. "We can't stay with the coach. We need to find shelter." Madeline nodded weakly, leaning heavily against her sister as they began to trudge through the knee-deep snow, leaving behind their trunks and possessions. Nothing mattered now except survival. They had managed only 100 yards when Madeline collapsed. Sophia dropped to her knees beside her sister, tears freezing on her cheeks as she desperately tried to rouse her. "Please, Maddie," she begged, shaking her sister's shoulders. "You have to get up. We have to keep going." A sound carried on the wind, faint at first, then growing louder. Sophia lifted her head, straining to hear. Hoofbeats. The rhythmic crunch of snow beneath powerful legs. Through the swirling snow emerged a massive black stallion, steam billowing from its nostrils. Atop the magnificent beast sat a broad-shouldered man, his face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a bandana pulled up against the cold. Sophia summoned what little strength she had left and waved her arms frantically. "Help us, please." The rider spotted them immediately, guiding his horse toward the stranded women with practiced ease. As he drew closer, Sophia could see piercing blue eyes that stood out against his weathered face. In one fluid motion, he dismounted and knelt beside them, quickly assessing their condition. "What in tarnation are you ladies doing out here?" His voice was deep and rough, but not unkind. "Our stagecoach broke down," Sophia explained through chattering teeth. "The driver went for help but never came back." Without hesitation, the stranger removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around Madeline's shoulders. "Your sister's in a bad way," he observed, his expression grim. "Hypothermia's setting in. Can you help us?" Sophia pleaded. The man nodded, lifting Madeline's limp form into his arms as though she weighed nothing. "My cabin's about 2 miles from here. Not far for thunder here, but we need to move fast." He helped Sophia to her feet, then lifted her onto his horse before mounting behind her. With Madeline secured between them, he wrapped one strong arm around Sophia's waist and took the reins with his free hand. "Hold tight now," he instructed as the horse began to move through the snow. "You're safe together, I promise." As they rode through the blinding whiteness, Sophia found herself leaning back against the stranger's chest, drawing warmth from his solid presence. Despite her fear and exhaustion, she felt a curious sense of security in his arms. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "Ethan," he replied. "Ethan Dawson, and you ladies?" I'm Sophia Archer. My sister is Madeline. Well, Miss Archer, you and your sister picked a mighty poor day for traveling. This storm's been brewing for days. We didn't know, Sophia admitted. We're from Boston. We've never experienced anything like this. Ethan's cabin appeared through the trees like a beacon of hope, a sturdy log structure with smoke curling from the stone chimney. As they approached, Sophia could make out a barn and corral nestled against a hillside, partially sheltered from the worst of the wind. Ethan dismounted smoothly, helping Sophia down before carrying Madeline toward the cabin. "Doors unlatched," he said. "Push it open." Sophia hurried ahead, fumbling with cold, numbed fingers to open the heavy wooden door. Warm air enveloped her as she stepped inside, nearly bringing her to her knees with relief. The interior was simple but comfortable. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a cooking area nearby. A table and chairs occupied the center of the main room, while a curtain partially concealed what appeared to be a sleeping area. "Get those wet things off," Ethan instructed as he laid Madeline on a bed near the fire. "There are blankets in that trunk and some clothes that might fit you in the chest by the wall. They belong to my sister." As Sophia moved to help her sister, Ethan built up the fire, adding logs until the flames leaped high, casting dancing shadows across the walls. He then moved to a pot hanging near the hearth, checking its contents before adding water from a nearby bucket. "Stew's been simmering all day," he explained. "You'll need something warm inside you." Sophia managed to remove Madeline's sodden clothing, replacing it with a flannel nightgown she found in the chest Ethan had indicated. Her sister remained alarmingly still, her breathing shallow. "She's not waking up," Sophia said, fear evident in her voice. Ethan approached, kneeling beside the bed to examine Madeline. His large, calloused hands were surprisingly gentle as he checked her pulse and felt her forehead. "Her body temperature's dangerously low. We need to warm her gradually." He moved efficiently around the cabin, gathering additional blankets and heating bricks in the fire before wrapping them in cloth and placing them around Madeline's body. "These'll help," he said. "Now, you need to get dry too before you end up in the same state." Sophia hesitated, glancing down at her sister. "I'll keep watch over her," Ethan assured her. "There's a screen in the corner you can change behind." Reluctantly, Sophia gathered the dry clothing he'd offered and moved behind the wooden privacy screen. As she peeled off her wet garments, she realized how close they had come to death, if Ethan hadn't found them when he did. The borrowed clothes, a simple cotton dress and woolen stockings, were slightly large but wonderfully warm. When she emerged, she found Ethan spooning broth between Madeline's lips, coaxing her to swallow. "She's responding," he said, looking up as Sophia approached. "That's a good sign." Relief washed over Sophia, and suddenly the events of the day caught up with her. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Ethan hadn't moved with surprising speed to catch her. "Easy now," he murmured, guiding her to a chair by the fire. "You're exhausted." As he handed her a bowl of steaming stew, Sophia had her first clear look at their rescuer. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with a strong, square jaw partially hidden beneath several days' growth of beard. His eyes, the color of a summer sky, were kind but held a sadness that spoke of past hardships. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing the words were inadequate for what he had done. "If you hadn't found us." "But I did," he replied, no sense dwelling on what might have been. As Sophia ate, the warmth of the food spreading through her body, she studied Ethan Dawson more carefully. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to relying on himself, yet there was a gentleness in the way he tended to Madeline that suggested a compassionate nature. "You mentioned a sister," Sophia said, hoping to learn more about their mysterious rescuer. Does she live nearby? A shadow passed over Ethan's face. Catherine died 2 years ago. Influenza took her and my parents within a week of each other. I'm sorry, Sophia said softly. We lost our parents recently too, our father to heart failure and our mother to grief shortly after. Ethan nodded in understanding. So you're heading west to start fresh? Yes, we have an uncle in Prescott who offered us a place to stay until we can establish ourselves. Prescott's a good town, Ethan remarked, growing fast since they made it the territorial capital. Still, it's a rough country for two Eastern ladies on their own. There was no condescension in his tone, merely a statement of fact, but Sophia felt a flicker of defensiveness. We're stronger than we look, Mr. Dawson. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I don't doubt that, Miss Archer. You'd have to be to survive what you just did. But the Arizona Territory doesn't forgive mistakes easily. Before Sophia could respond, Madeline stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips. Sophia was instantly at her side, taking her sister's hand. Soph. Madeline's voice was weak, her eyes confused as they fluttered open. Where are we? We're safe, Sophia assured her, squeezing her hand. Mr. Dawson found us in the snow and brought us to his cabin. Madeline's gaze drifted to Ethan, who stood a respectful distance away. You saved us. He shrugged, looking somewhat uncomfortable with the gratitude in her voice. Just did what anyone would do. Not anyone would ride out in a blizzard, Sophia pointed out. You risked your life for strangers. I was already out checking on my cattle, Ethan explained. Saw the abandoned stagecoach and followed your tracks. He moved to the fire, adding another log. Storm's getting worse. You ladies will need to stay here until it passes. Sophia glanced toward the window, where snow was accumulating against the glass. How long do you think that will be? Hard to say. These mountain storms can last anywhere from a day to a week. A week alone with a man they barely knew, it was hardly proper, yet what choice did they have? We don't want to impose. It's no imposition, Ethan assured her. I've got plenty of supplies, and it's not like I have pressing social engagements. The slight twitch of his mouth suggested a rarely used sense of humor. As the evening progressed, Madeline drifted back to sleep, her color improving and her breathing deeper. Sophia remained by her side, exhaustion evident in the dark circles beneath her eyes. You should rest too, Ethan said, placing a hand on her shoulder. I'll keep watch over both of you. Where will you sleep? Sophia asked, suddenly aware that there appeared to be only 2 beds in the cabin. Don't worry about me, he replied. I've got a pallet I can roll out by the fire. Despite her concerns about propriety, Sophia was too exhausted to argue. She settled onto the second bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Ethan silhouetted against the firelight, his strong profile turned toward the window as he watched the falling snow. Morning arrived with a pale, diffused light filtering through the frost-covered windows. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and the quiet sounds of movement. For a moment, she was disoriented, then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She sat up quickly, looking first to Madeline, who still slept peacefully, her breathing normal and her cheeks touched with healthy color. Relief flooded through Sophia as she turned toward the source of the sounds. Ethan stood at the stove, his back to her as he prepared breakfast. He had shaved, she noticed, and changed into a clean shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. Good morning, she said, her voice still husky with sleep. He turned, offering a brief nod. Miss Archer, how are you feeling? Much better, thank you. She glanced down, suddenly self-conscious about her rumpled appearance. And please call me Sophia. Sophia, then. He gestured toward a pot on the stove. Coffee's ready, and there's cornbread and bacon if you're hungry. As Sophia rose and moved to the washstand to freshen up, she couldn't help but notice the tidiness of the cabin. Despite its rustic nature, everything was clean and well-maintained, not what she might have expected from a bachelor living alone in the wilderness. "Have you lived here long?" she asked as she joined him at the table, accepting a mug of steaming coffee. "5 years," he replied. "My father built this place when I was a boy, but we moved to town when I was 16 so my sister could attend school. After they passed, I couldn't stand being in that house with all its memories, so I came back here." "You prefer the solitude?" Ethan considered this as he served up a plate of food. "I prefer the honesty of it. Nature doesn't lie or pretend. A storm is a storm, a wolf is a wolf, people are more complicated." There was a story there, Sophia sensed, but she didn't press. Instead, she asked, "What do you do out here all alone?" "I raise cattle mostly and do some trapping in the winter. Sell the hides in Clifton when I go in for supplies." He glanced toward the window where snow continued to fall steadily. "Speaking of which, I need to check on the animals." "Will you be all right for a bit?" "Of course," Sophia assured him. "I can look after Madeline." After Ethan had donned his coat and headed outside, Sophia moved to her sister's bedside. Madeline was awake now, her eyes clearer than they had been the night before. "How are you feeling?" Sophia asked, touching her sister's forehead to check for fever. "Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo," Madeline admitted with a weak smile. "But I'm alive, thanks to your cowboy." "He's not my cowboy," Sophia corrected, feeling an inexplicable warmth rise to her cheeks. Madeline's smile widened slightly. "Perhaps not yet, but I saw the way you looked at him last night." "Maddie, I was barely conscious last night. And besides, we know nothing about him except that he was kind enough to rescue us." "Sometimes kindness is the most important thing to know about a person," Madeline replied softly. Before Sophia could respond, the door opened, and Ethan stamped the snow from his boots before stepping inside. His cheeks were ruddy from the cold, his breath visible in the air that followed him. "Animals are fed and watered," he reported, hanging his coat on a peg by the door. His gaze shifted to Madeline. "Good to see you awake, Miss Archer. You had us worried." "Thank you for saving us, Mr. Dawson," Madeline said. "I understand we owe you our lives." Ethan shrugged off the gratitude once again. "Just fortunate I came along when I did." He moved to the stove, pouring a cup of coffee before returning to Madeline's bedside. "Think you could manage some broth? You need to build your strength." As the day progressed, Madeline continued to improve, though she remained weak. Sophia helped her sister to the table for the midday meal, where they learned more about their rescuer. Ethan Dawson had been born in Missouri, but had come west with his family as a boy of 10. His father, seeking opportunities in the newly organized Arizona Territory, had established a modest ranch outside Clifton. Though not formally educated beyond the basics, Ethan revealed himself to be well-read and knowledgeable about a wide range of subjects. "My mother was a schoolteacher before she married," he explained when Sophia expressed surprise at finding a copy of Shakespeare's sonnets among his books. "She made sure we didn't grow up to be ignorant, despite the lack of schools out here." As evening approached, the storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, the wind had intensified, howling around the eaves of the cabin like a hungry predator. "Looks like you ladies will be my guests for at least another day," Ethan observed as he stoked the fire. "Hope you don't mind simple fare. I wasn't expecting company when I laid in supplies for the winter." "After nearly freezing to death, simple fare is a feast," Sophia assured him. She had spent the afternoon mending some of Madeline's clothing that had been damaged in their ordeal, grateful for the sewing kit Ethan had produced from a cabinet. As they shared a supper of rabbit stew and sourdough bread, Madeline asked, You have many neighbors, Mr. Dawson. Nearest ranch is about 5 miles east the Hendersons. Good people. Then there's old Jim Townsend, who has a mining claim up in the hills, and the Wilson family about 10 miles south. We look out for each other when needed, but mostly keep to ourselves. It sounds very different from Boston, Sophia remarked. There, you can hardly step outside without encountering a dozen people. Would you go back? Ethan asked, his blue eyes studying her with unexpected intensity. If you could, Sophia considered the question carefully. There's nothing for us there anymore. Our parents are gone, our childhood home sold to pay debts, and besides, she glanced at Madeline, who nodded encouragingly. We've always dreamed of something different, something more than the confined life of society ladies, even now. Ethan raised an eyebrow. After seeing how harsh this country can be, perhaps especially now, Sophia replied with a small smile. There's an honesty to it, as you said. The challenges are real, not the artificial constraints of propriety and expectation. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, approval, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. But he merely nodded and returned to his meal. Later, as Madeline rested and Sophia helped Ethan clean up after supper, she found herself curious about his solitary existence. Don't you get lonely out here? He paused in drying a plate, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes, but I've found most people bring more complications than comfort. You've been hurt, Sophia observed quietly. Ethan's shoulders tensed slightly before he deliberately relaxed them. Most folks have, one way or another. He placed the plate on a shelf and turned to face her. What about you, Sophia Archer? What hurts have you endured beyond losing your parents? The directness of his question caught her off guard. In Boston, such personal inquiries would have been considered unforgivably rude. Yet here, in this isolated cabin with the storm raging outside, convention seemed irrelevant. I was engaged once, she admitted. To a man my parents approved of, the son of my father's business partner. Richard was charming, well-connected, everything a proper Boston girl should want. She busied herself with folding a towel, avoiding Ethan's gaze. But when my father's business faltered and it became clear there would be no substantial dowry, Richard's affections cooled remarkably quickly. Fool, Ethan said simply. Sophia looked up, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. A man who values money over character doesn't deserve a woman like you, he continued, his voice matter of fact. The compliment, delivered without flattery or expectation, warmed Sophia more than the fire that blazed nearby. Thank you, she said softly. Their eyes met across the small kitchen, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared values or mutual understanding. Then Madeline called from her bed, breaking the moment, and Sophia turned away to attend to her sister. That night, as she lay in the borrowed bed listening to the wind, Sophia found herself thinking about Ethan Dawson's hands, strong and capable, yet gentle when tending to Madeline or handling the delicate pages of his books. There was something compelling about a man who could survive in this harsh wilderness, yet retain such tenderness. The storm continued unabated for 3 more days, during which time a routine of sorts developed in the cabin. Ethan would rise first, tending to the livestock before returning to prepare breakfast. Sophia, an early riser herself, would often be awake to help with the cooking and cleaning, while Madeline, still recovering her strength, would join them later. During the long hours indoors, Ethan taught the sisters how to play poker using a deck of worn cards, laughing at Sophia's surprisingly competitive nature. In return, Sophia read aloud from his books in the evenings, her clear voice bringing Shakespeare's words to life as they sat before the fire. On the fourth morning, Sophia woke to silence. The constant howl of the wind that had become so familiar was gone, replaced by an almost eerie quiet. She slipped from her bed and moved to the window, brushing aside the curtain to reveal a world transformed. The snow lay deep and pristine, glittering in the early morning sunlight. The sky above was a clear, brilliant blue, with no trace of the clouds that had shrouded it for days. Beautiful, isn't it? Sophia turned to find Ethan standing behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "It's like a different world," she murmured, turning back to the view. "That's the thing about storms," he said, his voice low. "They change everything they touch, but when they pass, there's a kind of peace that follows." Sophia glanced up at him, struck by the poetic nature of his observation. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a deepening of the connection that had been growing during their enforced proximity. Ethan cleared his throat and stepped back. "I need to check the trail to town. If it's passable, I can take you both to Clifton tomorrow, and you can catch the next stagecoach to Prescott." The mention of leaving should have brought relief, but Sophia felt an unexpected pang at the thought. "Yes, of course," she said, forcing a smile. "We've imposed on your hospitality long enough." "It's been no imposition," Ethan said quietly before turning away to pull on his boots and coat. After he had gone outside, Sophia moved to wake Madeline, who was now able to sit up for longer periods and move around the cabin with assistance. "The storm has passed," Sophia told her. "Ethan says we may be able to leave for Clifton tomorrow." Madeline studied her sister's face. "You don't seem happy about that." "Don't be silly," Sophia replied, busying herself with straightening the blankets. "Of course I'm happy. We can continue our journey to Uncle William's as planned. And leave behind the first man who's made you smile since Richard's betrayal," Madeline observed shrewdly. Sophia's hands stilled on the blanket. "Ethan is merely being kind to strangers in need. He'll likely be relieved to have his home to himself again." "I'm not so sure," Madeline said. "I've seen the way he watches you when you're not looking like a man who's discovered something precious and unexpected." "You're being fanciful," Sophia chided, but she couldn't help the flutter of hope that stirred in her chest. "Besides, what future could there be? We're bound for Prescott, and he has his life here." "Plans can change," Madeline pointed out. "Isn't that what this journey west was all about? Embracing new possibilities." Before Sophia could respond, the door opened and Ethan entered, stamping snow from his boots. His face was grim as he removed his coat. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked, instantly alert to his change in mood. "Trail's completely blocked about 2 miles out," he reported. "Avalanche took out part of the hillside. It'll be at least a week before it's cleared, maybe longer." "So we're still stranded," Madeline said, a note of satisfaction in her voice that earned her a warning glance from her sister. "I'm afraid so," Ethan confirmed. "I'm sorry. I know you ladies are anxious to reach your uncle." "It can't be helped," Sophia said, "and we're fortunate to have shelter and company during the delay." A small smile touched Ethan's lips. "I was thinking the same thing." As the day progressed, Sophia found herself watching Ethan more closely, looking for signs that Madeline's observations might be accurate. She noticed the way his eyes followed her movements, how he seemed to find reasons to be near her, offering assistance or simply engaging her in conversation. That evening, with Madeline asleep early, Sophia and Ethan sat before the fire, their conversation turning to their respective pasts and the circumstances that had shaped them. "After my parents and Catherine died," Ethan revealed, his voice low to avoid waking Madeline, "I nearly lost myself in grief. Spent too many nights with a bottle for company, took foolish risks that could have gotten me killed." He stared into the flames, his profile strong against the firelight. It was Jim Townsend who set me straight, old prospector I mentioned. Found me half frozen in a ravine after my horse threw me during a drunken ride. Nursed me back to health, then gave me the tongue lashing of my life." "What did he say?" Sophia asked, drawn into his story. A small smile touched Ethan's lips. "He said, 'Boy, dying's easy. It's living that takes real courage. Your folks didn't raise you to quit when things got hard.' Then he made me promise to honor their memory by living a life worth something." He glanced at Sophia. "I've tried to keep that promise." "I think you've succeeded," she said softly. "You've built something meaningful here, and if you hadn't—" She let the thought trail off, but they both knew what she meant. If he hadn't turned his life around, he wouldn't have been there to save her and Madeline. Ethan reached out, his calloused fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. "What about you, Sophia? What dreams are you carrying to Prescott?" The simple touch sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "I want to teach," she admitted. "I was educated at a ladies' seminary in Boston, and I've always loved learning and sharing knowledge. Uncle William says there's a need for teachers in the territory." "You'd be good at it," Ethan said with conviction. "You have patience and kindness, but there's a strength in you too." Children would respond to that. His understanding of her character, so accurate despite their short acquaintance, touched Sophia deeply. "Thank you," she murmured, conscious of how close they were sitting, of the intimacy created by the firelight and shared confidences. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. His gaze dropped to her lips, and he leaned forward slightly, but then he seemed to catch himself, drawing back with a small shake of his head. "It's getting late," he said, his voice rougher than before. "We should both get some rest." As Sophia prepared for bed, she couldn't help feeling a mix of disappointment and confusion. Had she misread the situation? Or was Ethan, like her, struggling with the propriety of feelings that had developed so quickly under such unusual circumstances? The next morning brought a return to their established routine, though there was a new awareness between them, a tension that hadn't been there before. Sophia found herself hyperconscious of Ethan's presence, of the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders as he chopped wood, of the rare but transformative nature of his smile. When he announced his intention to ride to the Henderson ranch to see if they had survived the storm unscathed, Sophia felt an irrational spike of fear at the thought of him leaving, even temporarily. "Will it be safe?" she asked, helping him pack some supplies to share with his neighbors. "The worst of the danger has passed," he assured her. "And Thunder knows these trails better than most men. We'll be fine." Still, she stood at the door watching until he disappeared into the trees, a strange emptiness settling in her chest once he was gone. "You're in love with him," Madeline said matter-of-factly from her seat by the fire. Sophia turned, startled by her sister's bluntness. "Don't be absurd. We've known him less than a week." "Time isn't always the most important factor," Madeline replied. "Sometimes a person just fits into your life, into your heart, as if they were always meant to be there." "Even if that were true," Sophia said, moving to add a log to the fire, "what then? We're still bound for Prescott, and he has his life here." "Are we?" Madeline asked quietly. "Bound for Prescott, I mean. We've never even met Uncle William. He's offered us a place to stay out of family obligation, not because he particularly wants two nieces he barely knows." "What are you suggesting?" Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. "That perhaps our future lies here, not in Prescott." Madeline's eyes were earnest as she continued. "You could still teach, Sophia. Ethan mentioned that Clifton is growing. They probably need a school teacher. And I could help. I've always been good with numbers. I could keep the books for local businesses." "Madeline Archer, are you actually suggesting we change our entire plan based on a few days' acquaintance with a man?" Sophia tried to sound scandalized, but the idea had already taken root in her mind, unfurling possibilities she hadn't dared contemplate. Not just any man, Madeline corrected with a small smile. A man who risked his life to save ours. A man who has shown nothing but kindness and respect. A man whose eyes follow you with such longing that even I, bedridden as I've been, couldn't miss it. Sophia sank into a chair, her thoughts whirling. Even if what you say is true, he hasn't spoken of any feelings for me. For all we know, he's merely being a gracious host until we can continue our journey. Then perhaps one of you should find the courage to speak, Madeline suggested gently, before it's too late. The day passed slowly in Ethan's absence, giving Sophia ample time to consider her sister's words. By late afternoon, she had worked herself into a state of nervous anticipation, jumping at every sound that might herald his return. When he finally appeared, leading thunder through the deepening twilight, Sophia felt such relief that she nearly ran outside to meet him. Only propriety held her back, forcing her to wait inside while he stabled his horse. When he entered the cabin, his face was grave, causing Sophia's heart to sink. "What's wrong? Are the Hendersons all right?" "They're fine," Ethan assured her, removing his snow-covered coat. "But I met Jim Townsend on the trail back. He'd been to Clifton." He hesitated, glancing between the sisters. "There was a telegram for me there. Bad news." "What is it?" Sophia asked, moving to his side. "My cousin Frank in Tucson is ill typhoid. His wife's expecting their third child, and there's no one to help with their ranch." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his distress evident. "I need to go to them as soon as the trail clears." "Of course you do," Sophia said, ignoring the hollow feeling in her chest. "Family comes first." Ethan's eyes met hers, a conflict visible in their blue depths. "Tucson's in the opposite direction from Prescott," he said quietly, "and I don't know how long I'll need to stay." The implication was clear: their paths would diverge completely. Whatever might have been developing between them would be cut short by duty and distance. "I understand," Sophia said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "We've already imposed on your kindness far longer than we should have." "Sophia," Ethan began, then stopped, seeming to struggle for words. Madeline, observing their exchange with dismay, suddenly exclaimed, "Oh!" and pressed a hand to her side, her face contorting in apparent pain. Both Sophia and Ethan rushed to her side. "Maddie, what's wrong?" Sophia demanded, fear replacing her heartache. "I don't know," Madeline gasped, doubling over. "A terrible pain." Ethan gently lifted her back onto the bed while Sophia hovered anxiously. "Where does it hurt?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Madeline gestured vaguely to her right side. "Here, it comes and goes." "Oh." She winced dramatically. Sophia recognized the performance for what it was. Her sister had always been a terrible liar, but Ethan seemed genuinely concerned. "Could be her appendix," he muttered. "I've seen it before. What can we do?" Sophia asked, playing along for now, though she planned to have strong words with her sister later. "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted, "if it is her appendix and it bursts." He didn't need to finish the sentence for Sophia to understand the gravity of such a situation. "The closest doctor is in Clifton, but with the trail blocked." "Perhaps it will pass," Madeline suggested, her voice weak but her eyes suspiciously bright. "If you could both just help me get comfortable." As they arranged pillows and blankets to ease her supposed discomfort, Sophia whispered fiercely in her sister's ear. "What do you think you're doing?" "Buying time," Madeline whispered back. "Someone needs to say something before you both let pride and circumstance drive you apart." Before Sophia could respond, Ethan returned with a cup of willow bark tea he had prepared. "This might help with the pain," he said, helping Madeline to sit up and drink. "Thank you," Madeline murmured, taking a small sip before grimacing slightly. It's quite bitter. Most medicine is, Ethan replied with sympathy. As the evening progressed, Madeline's condition seemed to stabilize, though she insisted she felt too weak to leave her bed. Sophia found herself alone with Ethan once more as they prepared a simple supper. "I'm worried about her traveling in this condition," Ethan said, glancing toward Madeline's bed. "Even once the trail clears." "So am I," Sophia agreed, feeling guilty for the deception but unable to expose her sister's ruse. "Perhaps we should delay our departure until she's stronger." "That might be wise," Ethan nodded. "And I could delay my trip to Tucson by a few days to make sure you both have what you need before I go." A heavy silence fell between them as they worked, each acutely aware of the other's proximity yet unable to bridge the emotional distance that had suddenly appeared. Finally, as they sat down to eat, Sophia gathered her courage. "Ethan, I want to thank you not just for saving our lives but for everything since. Your kindness has meant more than I can express." He looked up, his blue eyes intense. "It wasn't just kindness, Sophia." Her heart quickened at his words and the way he said her name. "What do you mean?" Ethan set down his fork, his expression serious. "I've lived alone for a long time, convinced that was what I wanted, what I needed. But these past days with you and Madeline here—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "It's made me realize what I've been missing." "And what's that?" Sophia asked softly, hardly daring to breathe. "Connection. Purpose beyond just surviving from one day to the next." His gaze held her steadily. "When I found you in that snowstorm, I was just doing what needed to be done. But now, the thought of you leaving—" He shook his head slightly. "It shouldn't affect me this way, not after such a short time, yet it does." Sophia's throat tightened with emotion. "It affects me too," she admitted. The thought of saying goodbye, a flame of hope kindled in Ethan's eyes. "What are you saying, Sophia?" "I'm saying that perhaps our journey doesn't have to end in Prescott," she replied, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "That perhaps the storm that nearly took our lives also gave us something unexpected, a new direction, a new possibility." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Are you sure? This is a hard country, especially for someone not raised to its ways." "I'm not afraid of hard work or challenges," Sophia said, squeezing his hand. "And Madeline and I have each other. And perhaps, if you were willing, we might have you as well." From across the room came a poorly disguised sound of delight from Madeline's bed, followed by an unconvincing moan of pain when they both turned to look. Ethan's lips twitched with amusement. "Your sister's not really ill, is she?" "I suspect not," Sophia admitted, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "Though I had no part in the deception, I assure you." A genuine laugh escaped him then, the first Sophia had heard, and it transformed his face, erasing the lines of worry and solitude. "She's quite the strategist." "She's incorrigible," Sophia corrected, though she couldn't summon any real annoyance. Ethan's expression sobered, though his eyes remained warm. "I still need to go to Tucson," he said. "My family needs me." "I understand," Sophia nodded. "Family should always come first." "But," he continued, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm, "I was thinking, Clifton needs a school teacher. The town council's been trying to establish a proper school for over a year now. And if you and Madeline were to stay there while I'm gone, we could get to know the community," Sophia finished, her mind racing ahead. "And when you return, we could see where this leads," Ethan said softly, "if you're willing." "I'm willing," Sophia whispered, her heart full to bursting with unexpected joy. Across the table their eyes held, a promise passing between them that needed no words. From Madeline's bed came a theatrical sigh. "Thank goodness. I was beginning to think I'd have to pretend to be at death's door before either of you would speak your mind." Ethan and Sophia broke into laughter, the tension of the past hours dissolving in their shared mirth. Later that night, after Madeline had miraculously recovered enough to join them for a celebratory cup of coffee, Ethan drew Sophia aside. "There's something I want to give you," he said, leading her to a small wooden chest in the corner of the room. From it, he withdrew a simple silver ring with a small blue stone that caught the firelight. "This was my mother's," he explained. "Not an engagement ring that would be too presumptuous after so short an acquaintance, but a token of my intentions and my hope for our future." Sophia's breath caught as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "The stone reminded me of the sky after a storm," he said, "clear and full of promise." His hands lingered on hers. "I know this is unconventional and perhaps too fast by society's standards, but out here, life doesn't always allow for the luxury of time," Sophia finished for him. "I understand, Ethan, and I don't need society's approval for what my heart tells me is right." The trail to Clifton cleared a week later, just as Madeline had regained enough genuine strength to travel. The journey was slow but uneventful, with Ethan leading Thunder, who pulled a small sleigh he had constructed to carry the sisters and their few possessions. Clifton proved to be a bustling mining town nestled in a valley, with a main street lined with false-fronted buildings and side streets filled with a mix of modest homes and more temporary structures. It was rougher than Boston, certainly, but Sophia could see the potential in its growing prosperity and diverse population. Ethan took them directly to the Henderson Ranch, where he had arranged for the sisters to stay during his absence. Martha Henderson, a practical woman in her 40s with a kind face and capable hands, welcomed them warmly. "Any friend of Ethan's is a friend of ours," she declared, ushering them into her comfortable home. "And we'll be glad of the company while he's away." The town council, upon learning of Sophia's qualifications and desire to teach, were almost embarrassingly eager to offer her the position of school teacher. A small building that had served as both church and meeting hall was quickly designated as the school, and within days, Sophia found herself with 15 students ranging in age from 6 to 16. Madeline, true to her word, proved adept at bookkeeping and soon found employment at the general store, whose owner had been struggling with his accounts since his eyesight began to fail. Ethan delayed his departure for Tucson by 2 days to ensure the sisters were settled, and when the time came for him to leave, he and Sophia shared a private moment in the Hendersons' garden. "I'll write as often as I can," he promised, his hands holding hers tightly. "And I'll return as soon as Frank is well enough to manage on his own." "We'll be waiting," Sophia assured him, trying to be brave despite the ache in her heart at their impending separation. "Madeline and I will be fine." Ethan reached up to cup her face gently. "I know you will. You're the strongest woman I've ever met, Sophia Archer." He hesitated, then leaned down to place a soft, brief kiss on her lips there first. "Something to remember me by," he murmured as he drew back. Sophia's fingers drifted to her lips, warmth spreading through her at the simple yet profound gesture. "As if I could forget the man who saved not just my life, but my heart as well." With a final squeeze of her hands, Ethan mounted Thunder and rode away, looking back once to raise his hand in farewell, before disappearing around a bend in the road. The weeks that followed were filled with activity as the sisters established themselves in Clifton. Sophia threw herself into teaching, finding unexpected fulfillment in the eager minds of her students. Madeline blossomed in her new role at the general store, her natural charm and efficiency making her a favorite among the townspeople. Ethan's letters arrived irregularly, but were treasured all the more for their rarity. He wrote of his cousin's slow recovery, of helping with the spring calving, of missing the mountains and forests of his home, and of missing Sophia with an ache that wouldn't subside. In her replies, Sophia shared stories of her students' progress, of Madeline's growing circle of admirers, of the way the town had embraced them both, and of how she found herself looking for him in every tall, broad-shouldered figure that passed by the schoolhouse window. As spring turned to summer, the frequency of Ethan's letters increased, along with hints that his cousin's health was improving steadily. In late July, a telegram arrived that made Sophia's heart leap with joy. Arriving Clifton August 3, counting days. Ethan. The morning of August 3rd dawned clear and bright, with a hint of autumn crispness in the air despite the summer heat to come. Sophia rose early, taking extra care with her appearance before heading to the schoolhouse as usual. Though she longed to wait at the edge of town for Ethan's arrival, she knew her students depended on her. Midway through the morning lessons, a shadow fell across the schoolroom doorway. Sophia looked up from the arithmetic problem she was explaining to find Ethan standing there, his hat in his hands, his face thinner but his eyes as blue and intense as she remembered. The children, sensing a momentous occasion, fell silent as their teacher rose from her desk, her face illuminated with joy. "Class," she said, her voice remarkably steady despite her racing heart. "This is Mr. Dawson, a very dear friend who has been away helping his family." Ethan nodded to the children, but his gaze never left Sophia's face. "I apologize for interrupting your lesson, Miss Archer," he said formally, though his eyes conveyed so much more. "But I couldn't wait another minute to see you." A collective sigh rose from the older girls in the class, while the boys exchanged knowing glances. "Perhaps we could take an early lunch break today," Sophia suggested, earning enthusiastic agreement from her students, who needed no further encouragement to gather their things and file out, many casting curious glances back at the tall stranger who had brought such a glow to their teacher's cheeks. When the last child had departed, Ethan closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Sophia," he breathed, and then she was in his arms, their embrace conveying all the longing and joy that words couldn't adequately express. When they finally drew apart, Sophia noticed a new confidence in Ethan's bearing, a sense of purpose that hadn't been fully formed when he left. "You've changed," she observed, studying his face. He smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. "So have you. Teaching suits you, you're radiant. It's not just the teaching," she admitted softly. "It's knowing you were coming back." Ethan took her hands in his expression growing serious. "I've had a lot of time to think while I was in Tucson about what I want about the future." He drew a deep breath. "I love my land, my home in the mountains, but I love you more, Sophia Archer. If staying in Clifton would make you happier, I'd sell the ranch and build us a home here." Touched beyond words by his willingness to sacrifice for her happiness, Sophia shook her head. "Your mountain home is part of who you are, Ethan. I wouldn't ask you to give that up." She squeezed his hands. "Besides, I've grown quite fond of the idea of being a rancher's wife, teaching perhaps just a few students who might have to travel too far to attend the town school." Hope blazed in Ethan's eyes. "You mean that?" "With all my heart," Sophia assured him, "though I'll need to finish the school term I've committed to." "Of course," he agreed readily. "That will give me time to make some improvements to the cabin, another bedroom for Madeline, a proper kitchen, maybe a small library for your books." Sophia laughed, overwhelmed by his eagerness and the love evident in every word. "You've thought of everything." "Not quite everything," Ethan said, suddenly looking nervous. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "There's one more thing I need to ask." Sophia's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "I had this made in Tucson," he explained, his voice husky with emotion. "I've been carrying it all the way home, waiting for this moment." He lowered himself to one knee, looking up at her with all the love and hope in his heart plainly visible on his face. "Sophia Archer, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me, share my home, my name, my future?" Tears of joy spilled down Sophia's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, Ethan Dawson, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, next to the silver one he had given her months before. "I never thought I could be this happy," he confessed as he rose to his feet. "Never thought I'd find someone who would make me feel complete." "Nor I," Sophia admitted, reaching up to touch his face tenderly. "But then, I never expected to be stranded in a snowstorm and rescued by a cowboy who would change my life forever." Their kiss was a promise, a beginning, a foundation for the years to come. The wedding took place in October, when the mountains were ablaze with autumn colors. The entire town of Clifton seemed to attend, along with the Hendersons, old Jim Townsend, and even Ethan's cousin Frank and his family, who had made the journey from Tucson for the occasion. Madeline, radiant in a gown of deep blue, stood beside her sister as maid of honor, her happiness for Sophia evident in every smile and tear. She had decided to remain in Clifton, having found not only employment but a sense of purpose and community she had never experienced in Boston. As Sophia and Ethan exchanged their vows beneath an arch of mountain wildflowers, she thought of the storm that had nearly claimed their lives, but had instead given them to each other. Sometimes, she reflected, what seemed like disaster was merely fate redirecting one's path toward unimagined happiness. Their life together began in the cabin that had sheltered them during that fateful blizzard, now expanded and improved, but still retaining the warmth and character that had first made it feel like home to Sophia. True to her word, she established a small school for the children of neighboring ranches, while also embracing her role as Ethan's partner in building their future together. 2 years after their wedding, their family grew with the birth of their son, William Ethan Dawson, a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Madeline visited often, delighting in her role as aunt and bringing news from town, where she had become not just the bookkeeper but part owner of the general store. On the 5th anniversary of their rescue, as a gentle snow fell outside their window, Ethan and Sophia sat before the fire, their son asleep in his bed, and their infant daughter, Catherine Sophia, cradled in her mother's arms. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if that wheel hadn't broken?" Sophia asked softly, watching the firelight play across her husband's still handsome face. "If we had made it to Prescott as planned?" Ethan reached over to touch his daughter's downy head, then let his hand rest on his wife's shoulder. "I try not to dwell on what might have been," he replied. "But I do thank God every day for that broken wheel, for the storm that brought you to me, and for the courage you showed in choosing a different path than the one you had planned." Sophia leaned into his touch, feeling the familiar warmth and security of his presence. "As do I. Though perhaps we should also thank Madeline and her theatrical talents," she added with a small laugh. "I'm not sure we would have found our way to each other without her intervention." Ethan chuckled, remembering Madeline's feigned illness and her transparent attempts to push them together. "Your sister is a force of nature, but I like to think we would have figured it out eventually, with or without her help." "Perhaps," Sophia conceded, gazing down at their sleeping daughter. "Some things are simply meant to be." As the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in pristine white much as it had on the day they first met. Ethan drew his family closer, marveling at how complete his once solitary life had become. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when I found you and Madeline in that snowstorm and told you that you were safe together, I had no idea how true those words would become, that we would build a life, a family, a future together." Sophia smiled up at him, her heart full of the love that had grown from those desperate moments in the snow to this peaceful evening by their own hearth. "Some promises, my love, are destined to be kept in ways we never could have imagined." Outside, the wilderness that had once threatened their lives now cradled their home, a testament to the strength they had found in each other, and the love that had transformed two strangers stranded in a snowstorm into a family, bound by something stronger than the fiercest blizzard or the highest mountain, the enduring power of a love born in adversity and nurtured through every season that followed.